All right, get ready, because we are diving deep today. Deep into the life of a legend, Diego Maradona. We're going right to the source, his autobiography, Yo Soy El Diego.
Which translates to,
I am the Diego.
yeah, and I mean, come on, that title alone tells you what you're in for, right? This isn't just a footballer giving us the rundown of his career. This is a statement.
It really is. It's like he's inviting us to see the world through his eyes, from Fiorito, his childhood neighborhood.
Which he describes, by the way, as a place where, for a kid, just having fun was a luxury.
Right. Amidst the poverty, though, there was one thing that brought him pure joy: football.
He talks about getting his first football when he was 3 years old and sleeping with it every night.
Seriously, that's some dedication right there. You can just tell, even then the ball wasn't just a toy to him. It was an escape. It was a friend. And this wasn't just him, casually kicking a ball around.
Oh, absolutely not.
He was out there playing with older kids, even using a fake name so he could get into tougher games.
If there was a game happening, Maradona was finding a way to be a part of it.
It's almost like even then you could see this kind of supernatural talent.
Oh, without a doubt. But there's this interesting contrast, too, because he also talks about his dad being really big on education.
It's like young Diego was being pulled in two different directions.
You've got his dad hoping for one future for him, and then this burning desire, this need to just play.
It's this push and pull that I feel like we see throughout his whole life.
Absolutely.
Almost like he was destined for greatness on the field, but the path there was never going to be easy.
Not even close.
And that kind of leads us to the Cebollitas, right? His youth team. This is a kid playing with and against older boys.
And not just keeping up with them.
No, not at all. He was stealing the show.
He tells this one story about playing against Racing. Remember, these are established clubs, resources, the whole 9 yards. And Maradona is out there just dominating. He even says that a coach from Racing was watching him play, totally bewildered, saying, "How is it possible you have this kid on the bench?"
It's hilarious. They couldn't believe what they were seeing.
It's almost like a preview of what's to come.
Oh, totally. And speaking of previews, this is when he gets his first ever mention in the newspaper.
And they spelled his name wrong.
He spelled it Caradona, which, I mean, come on.
We gotta laugh.
But still, the legend was starting to be written.
Little did they know.
Right, from Fiorito to the newspapers, and soon the world stage.
But of course, that meteoric rise, yeah, it comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh, for sure. New challenges, bigger stakes.
Exactly. And pretty soon, he makes his professional debut, Argentinos Juniors. He talks about this vivid memory he has of that day, the energy, the feeling that his whole life was about to change. And, well, it did.
Overnight, everything changes.
He even talks about buying himself a red Fiat 125.
Which, you think about it, for a lot of people in his position, that first big purchase is huge. Was this Maradona's way of celebrating the success he was finally finding? Or was it more than that?
Yeah.
Maybe a way to finally provide for his family on a level he never could have imagined before. It makes you think about the motivation behind these things, right? It's easy to forget that behind the legend.
There's a young man who is just trying to navigate all of this.
Exactly. And it wasn't all sunshine and roses either. He talks about the envy, the pressure that came with being in the spotlight.
The constant scrutiny.
And then, as if things weren't moving fast enough, he gets called up to the Argentinian national team.
By Menotti himself?
I can't even imagine.
Talk about pressure.
He says he was incredibly nervous, of course, but you can also hear the pride in his voice.
Like carrying the hopes of a nation on his shoulders.
And just when he's riding this high, he gets hit with a devastating blow. He's left off the squad for the 1978 World Cup.
Oof. Yeah, that one had to sting.
And it wasn't just a professional setback. He was crushed. His whole family was heartbroken.
But this is also where we start to see that classic Maradona resilience.
Oh, yeah.
He takes that frustration, that anger, and turns it into fuel.
He was determined to prove them wrong.
And he did. He comes back with a vengeance, though, for the 1979 FIFA World Youth Championship.
Yeah, he wasn't just playing this time around.
Leading the team, even. Captain.
And this is where we see that fire, that passion on the field really start to show.
He was not afraid to show his emotions out there. He even talks about how he got visibly angry after being subbed out during one game.
He wanted to play every minute of every game, even back then. That drive, that desire to just dominate.
Oh, yeah.
You could just tell it was building inside of him.
Absolutely. And eventually, that drive leads him to Boca Juniors, the team he always dreamed of playing for.
But even achieving a lifelong dream like that has to come with its own kind of pressure, right?
Oh, absolutely. And he talks about the atmosphere surrounding the club, the fans, the expectations, even a pretty intense encounter he had with the Barra Brava.
Wait, hold on. The Barra Brava, like Boca Juniors' hardcore fan base.
The one and only. He describes a time they actually came into the locker room, threatening the players, basically saying that anything less than a win is unacceptable. Talk about pressure.
That's a whole other level. And on top of all that, he had this strained relationship with his coach at Boca, Marzolini.
Two strong personalities, both with very different approaches to the game.
Marzolini was all about discipline.
Exactly, very tactical. And Maradona, well, he had that signature flair, that unpredictability.
Which, it caused friction, but I also think it pushed him even further.
For sure. Pushed him to prove himself.
It's interesting, though. Even with all the talent and all the success, he was still butting heads. Shows a different side to him,
It does, yeah. He was not afraid to stand his ground, even if it meant going up against authority figures.
That's true. But even amidst all of the intensity, you still see those glimpses of his playful side, Like, he tells this funny story about being denied entry to a Parisian cabaret.
What happened?
He wasn't wearing a tie.
You're kidding. Even Maradona.
Even Maradona. It's these little anecdotes that remind you that he's human,
Absolutely.
Experiencing life's absurdities just like the rest of us.
And then, in another turn of events, his journey takes him to Barcelona, one of the biggest clubs in the world, a dream for many.
It was. But his time there, well, let's just say it was marked by both triumph and tragedy. It's wild, though, even at the top, even with Barcelona, it seems like he just couldn't escape these internal battles.
Oh, totally. And it wasn't just the injuries or the pressure this time.
No, this time it was bigger than that.
He was battling his own demons, battling addiction.
Which he talks about very honestly, very openly.
He does. And it really just adds another layer to his whole story, You've got this phenomenal talent, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, dealing with injuries.
And now this, too.
It makes you realize that success, even on a global scale, doesn't make you immune to these things.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's something people often forget.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the legend, the image.
But at the end of the day, he was human, dealing with very real struggles.
And then, amidst all of this, comes the 1986 World Cup.
Talk about a turning point.
This wasn't just a tournament for him. This was a chance to rewrite his story.
And boy, did he ever.
The hand of God. That incredible solo goal against England. Moments that are forever etched in football history.
And he describes them in such vivid detail in the book. It's like you're right there with him on the field.
You really do feel the tension, the adrenaline.
And even with the hand of God, that controversy, he owns it.
Oh, absolutely. No apologies.
Classic Maradona.
But it's that goal against England, weaving through the entire team, that's pure magic.
Pure magic is right.
And, it's in that moment, that tournament, that he becomes more than just a footballer.
He becomes an icon.
Exactly. A global icon.
But even with that victory, even with that incredible high,
yeah,
you can kind of sense this foreshadowing starting to creep in.
Oh, yeah. The cracks are definitely starting to show.
His relationship with Bilardo, the Argentina manager, is becoming more and more strained.
And it's not just Bilardo, right? It's the Argentinian Football Association as a whole.
He feels like they're not respecting the team, not treating them the way they deserve to be treated.
And you can really feel that frustration, that anger building in his words.
He's especially vocal about his issues with Julio Grondona, who was the president of the AFA at the time.
He calls him out, basically saying he's more interested in power than in the actual sport.
And you see this theme pop up again and again with Maradona, this distrust of authority figures.
Oh, he's not afraid to speak truth to power, that's for sure.
Whether it's FIFA, his own clubs, he's calling out the hypocrisy wherever he sees it.
And he's not just talking the talk, he's aligning himself with causes he believes in.
Like his support of Cuba, his friendship with Fidel Castro.
That was a huge deal. He really saw Castro as a kindred spirit.
Someone who understood what it meant to fight against the system.
And it's interesting because for someone who is so often rebellious, he talks about Castro with this kind of reverence.
It's really something. But, that was Maradona. He had this incredible ability to connect with people from all walks of life.
He did. From Pope John Paul II to Fidel Castro, the man crossed paths with everyone.
He was drawn to people who challenged the norm, who weren't afraid to be themselves.
Authenticity was huge for him. And you see that in his autobiography, too. He's not trying to sugarcoat anything.
He's laying it all out there, warts and all.
And I think that's what makes it so compelling. It's not just a sports story. It's a human story.
Full of ups and downs, triumphs and tragedies.
It really makes you think about what it means to be great, what price we're willing to pay for our dreams.
It's something we can all relate to, even if our lives are nothing like Maradona's.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I think that's the mark of a truly powerful story.
It stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It does. And this one certainly did that for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Diego Maradona,
What a life it was.
we're left with a sense of awe at his talent, empathy for his struggles, and I think a greater appreciation for the complexity of human beings.
Beautifully said. Maradona's story is a reminder that greatness and flaws often coexist.
And that even the most iconic figures are still just human at the end of the day.
If you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out his autobiography, Yo Soy El Diego.
It's a wild ride, but it's worth it.
You won't regret it.